Hello to all of our audience out there watching the show. This is Just Law, your host, Dennis Bradley. I have with me today the distinguished honor to interview Mr. Tony BARR, a political activist and a person who has a heck of a story to tell in terms of where God has brought him and what he's been through and where he stands today. And we want to talk today's topic about the fundamentals of voting. As you guys know, there's a lot of pitfalls when it comes to voting. A lot of people who want to get involved in politics and have heard of stories like mine or others, and they say, oh man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So it's important that people arm themselves with information. You don't have to go through the school of hard knocks like some of us had to go through to figure out the process. There are people out there who have gone through the school of hard knocks or gone through a regular academia who can inform you as to how voting works and how you can make sure that your community and your vote truly and genuinely counts. And with us today we have a person here who's really rolled up their sleeves, who's come back home to Bridgeport to make a tremendous impact and has learned through the obstacles and processes how you can be effective in getting your community registered to vote and participating in the process. And I wanted to get a little background on him. Tony, thank you very much for coming here tonight and for informing us on this topic of the fundamental of voting. Now tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, where you come from, and where you are today.
My name is Tony BARR. I grew up in P.T. Barnum projects. I went to all the private parochial schools and was exceptionally in sports. I excelled in baseball, basketball, boxing, and also excelled in selling drugs as a young man. And it led me to a 21 and a half years federal sentence that I'm home now from, and I've been home almost 12 years. And it's all through the grace of God that it opened my eyes to a lot of other things, of stigmas of being a black man in America, or just being a black man in any little community in America. And that's where it stands in terms of how do we improve our community. I thought what I was doing as a young man was the right thing to do to make money, to provide for my family, but at the same time I was taking lives through selling drugs or creating violence in our community through drug selling, people buying drugs from me, and they are committing crimes or even killing people, taking lives. So I was a part of the problem, not part of the solution. Today I want to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem.
And now, Tony, that's a very impactful story, and we came and we met in the world of politics originally, and you've done so many interesting things, being a candidate for the Democratic Town Committee, being a candidate for local office, being a candidate for state office, and now you have your own political party. Tell us a little bit about that political journey that you've been on.
I'm sorry for laughing, but this was the toughest thing. It took 10 years of hard work and not giving up. And many times I wanted to give up and didn't feel that it was worth even continuing. When you get all the pitfalls in your community, when you're talking to young people or people in your age bracket and they don't see the vision, they don't understand what the importance of a party and being able to put them in a position to be relevant in their own community, because if you're not voting, you're not relevant. And we're not relevant because enough of us in our cities don't vote. And we make up the masses of the people, the majority of the people, and we have smaller numbers than the Europeans in our communities. And so that's the tragedy, when you can have a big number and a small number can outvote you, and then you wonder why you're in the conditions that you're in. And we're not going to point the fingers. It's our fault. It's part of the problem. It's our leadership. We have to be willing to say to our leaders, look, we have to do better. We want better. And again, forming the party, the purpose of the party is to have a voice for the voiceless, and that's what the purpose of my party. It's called the New Movement Party. It was started from the time that I came out of prison, and it was finally activated to the point of being relevant actually now, the year of 2023. And everyone's like, what's this New Movement Party? Well, they see the importance of it. It was important enough for the sitting mayor to say, I want to be on that line just for my own protection if things don't go my way. So this is how God worked. He puts you in a place the right way. If you're doing things the right way, it'll all elevate to the rightness.
Right, that's awesome. So the party's name is the New Movement Party, and now when you start up an organization like that, and we don't want to trip you up or play I gotcha, but just give us the basics. If somebody wanted to say, you know what, I don't feel that the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or any other party identifies my needs in the community of and the community that I want to serve, I want to start my own party. How would somebody go about doing something like that? What are the kind of the steps somebody could take so that if they wanted to do their own party, they might be able to do their own party?
First, you have to be sincere to yourself, because it took, again, 10 years to actually, with all the pitfalls, dealing with the state part of it, the Hartford, the Secretary of State's office, trying to solidify yourself in a position to have the party. You think you got things going the right way. There's so many different steps, and you start putting those steps in order, and you thinking that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You do those numbers, just using it as an example, and then they say, well, you still have another 5 more steps to go to complete it. So we've been trying for 10 years to get it to that level, and now we're at that level just through hard work and dedication, not giving up, and trusting in God to see it through on it. And then I got a lot of help as it became later on from good people in the state, in Hartford, that said, no, we're going to help you truly establish what you're trying to establish. And so we're almost to that point, whereas we'll be no different than any other party. Then you have to sign your members up. People can change parties from the Democratic Party, they become a new party member, or independent party, or like all the other Republicans. So when you build it up like that, so I'm catering to new young people that are out there in big numbers that are not doing anything other than not voting, not even register, just existing in their community and not having a voice. And they feel bad when you say, or get upset when you say, are you registered? No, I'm not registered. You want to get registered? No, I don't want to get registered. Okay, then I don't need to have that conversation with you. I'm here to try to help you understand what the importance of voting means, but you're not trying to understand. So in that community, if that's your position, then you're not even relevant on no level in your community.
That's important. And one of the things you said that I found very interesting that I think I want the viewers to understand is that there is help that you can get reaching out to organizations like the SEEC, which is the State Election Enforcement Commission. Those are organizations that are out there that if you wanted to do something and understand the process, you could reach out and call and get the necessary help. There's people who've done it and are true to it, like yourself, that they can reach out to and get the 411 in terms of what forms to fill out, when to submit, because there's a bunch of technical things that need to be done, right? And most of the times, even people like myself who are lawyers, we might not know that there's a time requirement, that there's a notice requirement, that there's a certain procedure that they want done. So are those some of the things that you find yourself having to maneuver in, and how do you kind of go about maneuvering around those situations to get yourself situated that you can be effective?
Well, the first thing you have to do is establish a good person as a treasurer, because you're dealing with funds. You're going to be dealing with funds. You have to notify them of anything you're doing with the funds. If you're receiving funds of any sorts of donations, you have to let them know if you're doing fundraisers, anything that's going to generate funds. And you have I think if I'm not mistaken, a 60 days filing or a monthly filing that you have to file to state that whatever amounts in your account or whatever you did with any funds, they just want to, and they have the right to look to be sure the funds are being used or allocated properly and not being used might be for your own usage, and we're not doing those things.
That's outstanding. And when it comes to money, everybody always, whether it's in the setting of church or in the setting of business or in the setting of politics, people always like to misquote the good book and say money's the root of all evil, right? But we understand that the love of money is the root of all evil, right? So money is something that is needed in every endeavor, and I think it's great that you point out to our viewers that understanding how the money works and how to keep appropriate accounting is step one, really, and making sure that after you get the paperwork in order, that you got a competent person who's willing, if they don't know the rules, to learn the rules, to make sure you comply with whatever is required with the money. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
That's your advice? Yep.
And if you have any questions, if you don't feel right about something, feel good about it, then just always can pick up the phone. Pick up the phone, contact the SEC, and they'll walk you through and if they don't know, they're going to search and they'll get back to you in a few days so you're right in what you're doing. You don't want to be misguided, and they don't want to misguide you. And the goals again my goals are to bring new young people into politics in their city, so that way we can start to bring some change in the community. That's the sole purpose.
So once you got your party established, you get your treasurer established, and you start understanding some of the technical things when it comes to the compliance work. You did all of that, right? Which is kind of like step one, right? Step one, and all the little sub chapters of step one. Now you're out there in the streets and you're trying to get young people of Bridgeport to vote. And as you know, the young vote is probably the hardest vote to turn out to vote. It's one of the lowest amount of people who vote, not just in Bridgeport, but across the nation. Young people seem to say there's no point in voting, or I don't know how the mechanism will go. What do you do in your new movement party, resident individuals out there trying to get votes, to make sure that people's voices are fully counted? How do you register people to vote? How do you inform them of things like these notorious things called the absentee ballots? How is it that you go about kind of getting people to understand how that whole process works?
Well, when I confront young people, I confront them in a first you have to disarm them, make them feel comfortable around you, what you're saying, and get a smile out of them, take that frown off your face, smile because I look like you, and that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. And then from there, once you get them to engage in a little conversation, you figure out what they like, if it's sports or books and something, and you talk about stuff that they like, and then you spring it on them. And say, well, why don't you consider, think about it, at least trying to become involved with politics, because we need young people. We're looking for young people. And some like, well, I don't want to. I said, well, are you a registered voter? No, I'm not. Would you like to be registered? No. Well, why? I don't know. Well, I'm telling you why you should be registered. People have lost their lives for us to have this right. This wasn't something that wasn't just given to us. People sacrificed the highest burden in this life. They sacrificed their lives to make a way for you.
And I'll jump in there, Tony, to say that as people of the African diaspora, people of the black background, that we more than anybody else have sacrificed for that right to vote, because it was not only with guns and bullets, but with lashes and lynching and fire hoses and attack dogs to make sure that we, people who look like us and come from where we come from, that we had a right to be able to vote, right? So I don't want to take too much of your platform, but so now you're telling this young person, okay, this is the importance of voting. Let's say the light turns on and say, wow, I think I do want to vote. How do you register somebody to vote? How do you go about it?
Well, first you have to get from the registered voters office a card, and with these cards, in English and Spanish. So then you go through that process to have all the elements, date of birth, all the things that you need, residencies, and so forth and so on. And once they go through those steps of filling it out, then you turn it back into the registrar's office, and that makes them a registered voter. But in the process of those things, getting a person to do those
Come on
things,
now, let's talk about that. Break it down. Yeah.
They're going to give you they're asking for too much information and such and such and such and such. But I'm saying, if you love your community and if you care about the people that sacrifice their lives before you, then you should have no problem filling out this paper. And if those things are not enough to convince you that someone died, when you came, that you would be in a better place, because we were viewed as 3/5 of a human being. In other words, like livestock to this day, and it's still on the books that we're 3/5 humans. It hasn't been removed from the book. So we had to sacrifice to get where we at, and every person of color should hold that dearly to their heart, that we have to earn everything in this life. Then voting is one that was earned, and we're taking the process of giving it back by not doing it.
So as you mentioned earlier, when we were talking about establishing a party and the technicalities of treasurers and reporting and accounting, this is one pitfall as well. Just simply the act of registering to vote is a place where oftentimes people find another pitfall, right? And one of the pitfalls that I used to, when I was more heavily involved, and still involved, but more heavily involved, it is in party affiliation. Right, there's a section on the box where it asks you if you want to be a Democrat, if you want to be a Republican, if you want to be an independent, or if you want to be unaffiliated or other, right? And then you could write in whatever other thing you wanted. Tell us the importance of selecting the party when it comes to the place you live. Why does you being a Democrat as opposed to being a Republican could play a different in how the vote turns out?
Well, and this is use Bridgeport as an example, because that's where we reside at. Bridgeport has been given the stigma through the process, the voting process or the registration process, of being Democratic city. So we automatically, as black or brown people, automatically believe that we are Democrats. So they automatically omit the other parties and find out later on, you know what, maybe I'm not sure anymore. So you find a lot of people now removing the Democrat and going to unaffiliated or Republican or independent. And but when you take those positions, if you're having a Democrat primary, then you have to be a registered Democrat. You won't be allowed to vote. And
so primaries, for those of people, so they make sure they understand. So primaries, soon as you're saying it, that's just for party against party.
Right.
Right. It's against, if it was a Baptist convention, you got to be a Baptist to vote in the convention, right? If it was a Catholic convention, you got to be a Catholic to vote in the convention, right? You can't have a Catholic come into the Baptist convention and the Catholic go into the Baptist convention and voting for it. They got to be part of the same team to be able to make it make sense, right? It's the same thing if our brothers out there who are Muslim persuasion, if you ain't a Sunni, you can't vote. If you ain't a Shia, you can't vote. You got to be of that affiliation to be able to have a voice in the process, right? So in a place like Bridgeport, where they say the majority of the people are registered as Democrats, if you don't register as a Democrat, you got no say into a primary.
No say whatsoever.
No say whatsoever. And that's some of the trickery that you've seen.
Right, and that's part of the problem.
Right.
That's the biggest problem.
Right.
You have a city of 160,000, if I'm not mistaken, documented anyway, and so many of them are unaffiliated or not registered and don't surrender or render a vote that can be so important to the community. I've given up every type of street activity in terms of doing things wrong to try to establish something right in the city of Bridgeport for the young people. So when I do go to the grave, that at least I hope I leave a legacy that someone else will take the opportunity and carry it on for the next generation and for as long as it's life in the city of Bridgeport and the world. These are the things that we have to take serious. We have to start looking at ourselves and say, do we want better or do we want to continue to allow the same things to play? Wouldn't it be amazing at some point you can say you run your own city and be able to create opportunities just like the surrounding towns? I don't want to get off into what our topic is, but the other cities and towns like Fairfield, Westport, Southport, Trumbull, Shelton, Eastern, they're thriving communities, and Bridgeport has been held back so long to people believe that the condition that we're in is that's the way it's supposed to be, and that's not true.
Right. So once you figure out the importance of the voting and you figure out these little traps that happen, one of the questions I get oftentimes, people come up to me and they say, well, I hear like in places like New York or things like that, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you can still vote. Now, we know that in Connecticut, that ain't true. Right. You got to be a U.S. citizen, not a legal permanent resident, not a green card holder, not a TPS holder, not a person with a social security card or a tax ID card. You got to be born or naturalized of the USA to be able to be part of any of this process, right? So now you get through the primary season, and whoever wins, you go on to the general election. Give us a flavor for the people who understand out there. Now this is round of voting number 2, right? Same political cycle, same year, same offices. You go round number 2 to the general election. What's the flavor look like over there?
So when you go to the general election, after you done had this tough fight on a primary where everyone's from the same party, now you're opening up to the general. That's all the parties. Everyone that's a registered voter can vote now. And that's where it gets tricky in a sense, because if you have strong allies with the other parties, then you stand a better chance of becoming an elected official through the process. But it's then Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Unaffiliated, New Movement, Green Party, all these different parties. Everyone can vote for anyone who they choose to. And
so now you vote any way you want to go to vote, and everybody always used to think one man, one vote. You go there, you stand in line, and you cast your vote. Now we know that's not the only way you can vote here in the state of Connecticut. There's a little thing called absentee ballots, and that's been a hot topic. We've seen in the news lately a whole court proceedings regarding the absentee ballots and everything else. Can you describe to us a little bit what that is, the absentee ballots, and what are some of the challenges when it comes to that kind of process?
An absentee ballot is a form that's given to anyone. First of all, you take out absentee ballots. a circulator. You would consider a circulator. You circulate these.
Where do you get them from? Tell us.
You get them from 45 Lion Terrace. That's the city building, and from the clerk's office there, they will give you how many you asked for. They will give you, and it's documented, and they know exactly how many you have by serial numbers. So then you take that, you circulate those forms in your community to anyone that doesn't want to go to the poll and vote. You give it to them to fill out, and you can help them fill it out. If you help them fill it out, you have to put all your information. If they fill it out, they have to just put their information, and then you submit that application.
That's what they call no excuse absentee ballots. Is what we have throughout the state of Connecticut now. Is that I think that in the days of old, you had to have a certain reason why you wanted one. Now anybody can get an absentee application, and anybody can help fill out an absentee application. Is what we're talking about at this point, right? Right. So you get the application, you go help somebody fill it out, and you mail that bad boy in, and what do they get back?
So you get all the people that are running for office. They'll have different roles, A, B, C, D, all the way to say J, and you have all the different party names assigned by it. Normally you have Democrat, Republican, Independent, Working Family, all different parties. So that's a lineup, and then from there the names are there. So and the ovals that you fill in for any of the candidates that you would like to support, and that's the basic process to that. And then you have drop boxes where you can actually drop them in those boxes if you don't want to put a stamp on them. They have designated sites around the city that you can put with cameras that you can put them in those boxes, and it'll be picked up by the clerk's office, and the votes will be tallied from there.
So once that's all said and done, usually we get a result on election night. Now, in order to get the result that the people want, it's important that people get politically engaged. And I remember back in the day, there was two general ways that people could volunteer and get politically engaged. One was what they used to call phone banking, and the other would be what they call canvassing, knocking on doors, right? Talk to us about that process and what you understand how that process works and how people can get involved in that type of an operation.
Well, we have two types of canvases. You have volunteers, and then you have paid canvases. And when you're out canvassing, you're knocking on the doors, you're being respectful to the people. You might get rejection from people, but that's no reason to be discouraged. You go to the next door and you knock on that one, and hopefully you get something good from that one. And then you continue on, just building a core with the candidate that you're representing to the community, and try to build a good rapport there with the community itself. And for phone banking, you just actually sit in an office or a room with a bunch of phones with a bunch of people. And when you have lists, you're calling those people the same way, just talking to them on the phone, trying to establish a relation and make them feel good about the person that you sell. It's just like a salesperson. You're trying to sell this individual that you're representing to the community, and hopefully that there will be a person that you can put down, and we label them A, B, C. If they're a good candidate, you believe, is a good person, that you put an A dot or 1, letter numbers, and you go through that process, and then you get a rapport that you feel good about, and we want to make it make sense to the candidate, make the candidate feel good about that, the community or the people that's in his circle, whether they're volunteer or paid people, that they're out doing what they're supposed to do for hopefully help them or her get elected. Right,
and so that's very important that you bring that point up, that a lot of times people think, I'm just going to go willy-nilly and knock on doors, I'm just going to go willy-nilly and make phone calls. It's really more than that. It's an organized way, a methodical way of keeping track of what you're doing, and you're really, like you said, either giving them an A or a 1, or ranking the people you're talking to understand whether or not they're going to be supportive of your candidate. And at some place that information gets harvested, that information gets processed, and people can keep track of how good or how bad they're doing throughout that process, right?
Absolutely.
And that's interesting, because a lot of times people think, well, I want to get politically involved, I want to be the candidate. And they think that the only way you can get politically involved is if your name is on the ballot. That's not true. Mm-hmm. You can do things like Tony BARR is doing, where yes, his name sometimes appears on the ballot, he's running for public office, and other times he has his own party where he's endorsing other people to run for public office. Like you talked about the mayor and other people who went out and sought out your solicited your party to be part of the ballot process. And then you can also have the third way where you volunteer yourself and you say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to canvass and I'm going to make the phone calls and I'm going to keep track of this information because I believe in a candidate. And we do have, through this new process, people getting paid for these things. And everybody makes a bad thing. Oh, if you get paid, you're a bad person. I don't necessarily believe that's true. As long as that you're working for the person who you actually believe in, and that's important. And now, Tony, you're a spiritual man. You're a man who has a belief. You're a man who has a deep love for the city of Bridgeport. What should people look for in your assessment as you looked at different politicians through? You've been in politics, a politician. What should people really be looking at when they say, "Hey, I want to get involved with this particular person"? What are some of the things that you think should be part of the metric of them vetting a possible candidate?
Well, first of all, my opinion that any candidate or anyone that's looking to get involved, he has to have a platform, or she has to have a platform, something that I believe, it should be the most important thing for any candidate, your platform. What is your platform? And when I say what your platform is, yours might be education, and jobs, but everyone said those same things and did a lot more than likely most of them don't, that once elected don't honor those things. And it's, and it's sometimes their hands are tied, but you have to have something that you can hang your hat on. You say, I did this. And the people will always say, I remember when he said he was going to do this, and he did exactly that, and this is the reason I'm going to vote for him. I'm going to always vote for him as long as he's running, because he actually did something that I've asked other candidates that was elected and never did those things.
Very interesting. And one of the things that I was always surprised that you did, Tony, and I've seen other organizations do as well, is that they come with their own list. And they say, this is a list of demands that we have, or a list of expectations that we have in the candidate that we would be willing to endorse. Would you be willing to sign on to this demand? And it could be something as practical as saying, I'm going to fix a bridge, or I'm going to fully fund a school system, or I'm going to support an initiative or not support an initiative, or I'm going to stand for a certain set of principles that I find to be important. And you can have, even though you're not a party, like in the case of Tony BARR, who started his own political party, but you could just be an individual person and say, I want this person to be willing to commit to these principles and sign off that they're going to commit to these principles if they are elected into public office. So that's a very important part, because a teacher of mine said, the best teachers are the teachers who get students who ask why. Asking them questions, the ebb and flow. If you just sit there like a bumping along after you voted and you went through all this process and you canvassed and you maybe made a political party, or you got involved into whatever degree, you got your friends out to vote, and then you just sit back and you say, well, now it's this person's job to do it. It really doesn't stop there, Tony, does it?
No.
You got to make sure that the person is true to what they said they were going to do.
What he says he's going to, she said she was going to.
And what are some of the ways that you think, or ways that you've done to make sure that, you've gone the extra mile to sort in your own party, but what are some of the things that you do to make sure that the politician is true to what they've committed to and what you believe that they were going to stand for? What are some of the ways that you interact with them?
Well, my position is, I hold them accountable for what they say or didn't say, or which if you know a problem, you see the problem, it's been a problem. I shouldn't have to tell you what that problem is. You should be able to recognize it from being a politician and in that community and seeing the hardship that's there, and be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna put more attention to homelessness. I'm gonna put more attention to jobs. I'm gonna put more attention to education. We're gonna, and you spread it out like that. And if they're not doing those things, then when the next time come around, they know they can't say it. But if they can say, hey, I did this. And it's a task to try to fix all. You can't fix it all at one time. I'm going to give him more respect. At least something you can see, some change and some form taken that might be in another cycle with him in a good place for the people, for the young people.
That's outstanding, and a very important piece of advice there for the community at large is watching this. Tony, I always commend you that you're willing to go out there to places that people have cast our folks as lost or forgotten or unfixable, and you're willing to roll up your sleeves and to make sure that folks know that everyone here who calls themselves an American, be they white, be they black, be they brown, be they Muslims or Christians or Jews or non-believers, has a right to this process. But it's important, I think, mostly among our folks, people of the African diaspora who populate this city, to really, really get engaged, because you hit a lot of topics here of education and jobs and buzzwords that politicians sometimes use. But we suffer the consequences of letting politicians just use buzzwords and not actually do anything to improve the condition of the community. So holding people accountable is the most important thing that we could do as citizens of this country after we got involved in the process, right? Because if we got involved, we have a right to complain, we got a right to speak up, we have a right to reach out to our legislators or our elected officials. And I want to leave it at that last point here, is reaching out to your elected officials. It is important, I think, Tony, that people feel confident enough to reach out to the congressmen, to reach out to the U.S. senators, to reach out to the state elected delegation of folks who are there, and to be familiar with their names. All this stuff is public information. And nowadays, you don't even have to be as formal as a letter. They have Facebook, they have Instagram, they have Twitter. You have all these mechanisms to be able to reach out to folks and encourage them to support or not support a certain initiative. But it makes a whole big difference, because there's two things that politicians keep track on: who votes and who gives money. And if they don't see you on one of those two lists, when you say, I want you to do X, Y, Z, they're going to say, who are you, right? So it's important that we understand that this stuff is not willy-nilly, that people do keep track of these things, and they are paying attention to who votes and who's donating money to campaigns, so that we understand that that's the power in those type of things. We got an election coming up next week. I think the 7th, if I'm not mistaken. The 7th of this month now. We have an election on November 7th. And I know that you and your party are going to be on the line. And I commend you for all the work you've done for our community. I'll let you do closing thoughts or comments. But we thank you so much for you taking the time to be here on the show on Just the Law and addressing some very important things. Thank you, and God bless you. But Tony, close us off with some last words.
I just want to say this to all the young people of color in the city of Bridgeport. Everybody always wants something new. We want a new pair of sneakers. We want a new car. We want a new outfit. Let's get with the new movement. It's new. It's for young people. The New Movement Party is for new young people that haven't been in politics, to get a better, clear mind understanding of this is why we're here. I'm here for the young people. I want you guys to truly understand that. And if you ever want to reach out to me, my phone number is 203-243-1314. Again, I love everyone in the city of Bridgeport, and may God continue to bless us, and God bless America.
You heard it here, folks, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all. And Just Law, your host, Dennis Bradley, with my main man, Tony BARR. God bless you all. See you next time.